How did sailing first become part of your life?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I first properly started sailing with Bangor Sea Cadets. So I did my first ever dinghy course at Seaboard Sailing Association because they are partners of Bangor Sea Cadets. But I grew up on like small boats my whole life.
And what did you love most at the start?
Just how much fun it was, like hanging out with my friends. Like it was nice to learn something new, and I've always loved being on the water. So it's like, I used to always go out in the boat from Donegal, like go to the Copeland Islands. So it was like going out in the boat, but like way funner.
And when for you did it shift from something you enjoyed to something more serious?
I think when I was about 16. I was sailing from I was maybe about 12, 13, and I got really into it and I was really enjoying it. But I got to a stage of dinghy sailing where I found it quite boring because I was on my own a lot. In a laser, and you're not really talking to people, you're not really excelling in your growth and your learning. For me, I felt that way. So then some family friends of ours had a boat in Bangor and they were like, "Do you want to come and learn how to do foredeck and how to do main sheet trim and learn how to helm?" So then I got involved with them, and suddenly my summers turned into regatta after regatta and sailing on Sundays. And then that was when I met some people before me that had been in yachting. So met some people that were like ex-Olympic sailors from Northern Ireland, and they were like, "Mel, you should consider moving into yachting. Go and do your yacht master. It's a really good career path." Because I didn't really want to go to university because I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Was there a particular result or a moment during that time that stands out to you?
Um, My particular result would probably be getting my place at the UK Sailing Academy to go and do my yacht master. So I had to go over and do an interview and a presentation on a super yacht that I liked, a sailing yacht. So I chose SY Nagoni, which was a very over-engineered, really high performance like super yacht at the time. And so I did a presentation on that and I got that place, and that really felt like the first big start in my career.
How did you move from club sailing into building a career in this sport?
I guess that all sort of happened in around the same time. So going to UKSA, doing my yacht master, and then learning about the industry while I was doing that process. So it took about 6 months because they rolled all of the other industry courses in as well. So like your SCCW, your medical, your firefighting courses, like all of that, powerboat level 2, even though I already had that, but they made me do it again and it was annoying. So like they rolled it all into the industry, and they had industry experts coming in and telling us about what the industry was like on board. And I got the opportunity while I was there to meet people that were already chief officers, that were already boatswains, that were already deckhands, that were back doing previous courses. So I think that was really where I made that big transition. And then when I got my first job on a yacht.
Fantastic. And during that time, was there, how was the expectation versus reality?
I think a lot of people expect it to be very, very glamorous. It's not. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of long days, and finding your first job is hard. I moved to Palma after I did my yacht master, and I was there for maybe 8 weeks before I got a job. And that was going down, walking the docks every day, talking to people, handing out CVs. Like I got creative with it. On a Friday afternoon, I go down the dock with CVs and beers because it was a good way to get talking to people. I'm not advising drinking on boats though. Having on my CV, I got my first sort of like day work, which was actually really funny because it was a guy from Northern Ireland who was working on a yacht. I knew through a family friend, and he was like, "Oh, Mel, you're in Palma. Why don't you come down and meet my crew?" And they were like, "We need a day worker for a few weeks," so I worked for them. And then I sort of, through friends that I'd met in Palma, then somebody was like, "I know somebody else that's looking for someone for a week or 2 weeks here." And then my first full time job that I got came through somebody I'd met 6 months before in Mallorca. I'd gone and done like some classic sailing over the summer, and then came back to Palma, and they were like, "There's a full time deckhand job on a 60-meter sailboat. Do you want it? Or would you like to go and interview for it?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's do it." So I
Yes.
joined there, and 4 days later, I did my first Atlantic crossing. Ooh, I think the period that you're a bosun shapes you the most because it's when you're doing all of your officer training, but you're still very, very hands on board. So you're not just doing the hands on physical jobs, you're not just servicing winches or servicing sheaves, you're also doing the passage planning, the safety rounds, you're dealing with a little bit of crew politics. You're really starting to like grow into that role of leadership. And I think that's the most important part of when you're working on a yacht, especially in the deck department, like that's when you learn what kind of leader you're going to be when you step into the officer role, because you soon learn what your natural position is and how you deal with people.
Yeah, following on from that, what do people not see about working professionally in sailing? So what would surprise young sailors that they might not expect?
That sometimes the boss will wake up one morning and go at 10 o'clock, it's like, right, today we're going to do an 8 hour sail to St. Bart's from Antigua. And he wants to go like that. So, a lot of these boats, it takes, maybe 25 minutes of prep to really go from being at anchor to being underway, fully sailed, everything ready to go. And a lot of young sailors they'll not expect everything to be so automated. They'll probably think, oh God, like there's a lot of effort grinding that main shape. No, it's done with hydraulics, and that's something that you don't learn until you get on really like more than 70 foot, it's size wise. Like that was something that took me a little minute to get used to, because suddenly you're not pulling something that has, 500 kilos on it. You're talking about tons and tons of weight. So there's a lot of risk as well, so that's something that a lot of young sailors would never think of.
And so with that in mind, what is something that's harder than it looks?
That's a really good question. Something that's harder than it looks. Going up the rig, because you're doing it all with hydraulics. And it's a really weird feeling because it's really fast. The first time you do it, you're like, oh my God, I'm not in control. And then you get so used to it because it becomes the normal. So that's probably something that a lot of young sailors have maybe done, but can relate to, but would be very different on board.
And what's been the biggest challenge in building your career? Was there ever a moment that you questioned it, and how did you handle that?
That really happened when I had a big medical issue. I had to have an emergency surgery and have my appendix removed when I was working on board. And that presented a lot of, obviously, a long recovery time. That was 16 weeks. And when I wasn't quite ready to go back to work, the owners were like, well, you have to come back or we'll replace you. So I made the choice to go back to work before I was ready, and I struggled physically, which then meant that, like, naturally my mental health spiraled a little bit, and I wasn't in a great onboard environment. So that really spiraled my mental health, and it made me feel really negatively about yachting. And it took me to actually come home for 3 months. I quit my job, which they were happy about, and so was I, to be honest with you, because I wasn't performing at my best, and they weren't happy, because if you crew aren't performing, then the owner's not happy, and then everybody's doing their job wrong. So I came home, I reset, I spent 3 months in Donegal, which can be depressing when you've just come from the Caribbean, and I just reset, and actually then ended up going and joining a boat where I was working with one of my best friends. So that was like, that comfort zone and confidence build was really good. So I had to take a moment, I took a breath, and then I went back into an environment where I knew that I would be comfortable, but also people were pushing me in a way that I could deal with. And I wasn't, like, I was back in a good headspace.
Mhm. And what skills outside of sailing have helped you the most? Is it your communication, organization,
Um,
resilience? Anything that you'd learned later that you wish you'd developed maybe slightly sooner?
Honestly, working on a yacht in any role, you're expected to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Things that I maybe wish I'd learned a bit earlier on is I wish I'd done a little bit more like of technology and engineering at school, because then that would have massively helped with my progression of, like, sometimes, like learning how to read a drawing, of a yacht and follow a cable, because you're not just a deckhand, you're an electrician, you help with plumbing, you assist the engineer, like if you have to rewire a wind instrument in, that's part of your job. So, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this, or I'm going to ask somebody on board to teach me how to do that. And if you get all those little extra skills, they come along really well. But also having like lots of extracurriculars, like, I mean, I rode when I was a kid, I rode for Bangor Sea Cadets, and I was passionate with kayaking. So all of those extra like on the water skills massively benefit you. Like a lot of people get their first jobs because of their extracurricular, like they're a kite surfer in their spare time, or they're like a free diving champion, or they like to scuba dive, because all of those little extras, those are the bits that the owners sell. Like that's what they care about. I remember working on a boat and the captain coming to me and saying, Mel, did I on your CV that you did like English Lit and language at A level. I was like, yeah. He was like, you know, this charter guest that's got her exams in a few weeks. Would you mind doing some tutoring with her? And I was like, since when was that in the job description? But yeah, sure, what's she studying? I was like, okay. And you just never know what it's going to throw at you, because at the end of the day, it's a luxury industry. And whatever they want is what they get.
If you were giving advice to younger people and you can imagine yourself being 14 again and dreaming of working in sailing,
Ooh.
what would you focus on?
I wouldn't get caught up in that, you know, like everybody gets a job on a really fancy race boat. That's what I wanted for a long time. And like, I know I'm not the most like sailor in the world. Like, I'm not the most amazing, but I know that I'm good at what I'm good at. And I think knowing where you're good at things is really important, because like, if you get your head in the deep end on a really complicated boat, like these boats are dangerous, and it is really easy to fuck things up. So I would say like to take a minute, take a beat, and be really honest with yourself. Reevaluate your skill set and go, you know, do I really want to work on a maxi? Okay, that's the goal. What have I got to do to get there? Okay, I'm going to take some extra sailing courses, or I'm going to, you know, go and talk to the performance team with RIA, or I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go and get that extra support to get to where you want to be. Because, you know, there's such a vast amount of options that you can do. Like, you can go and work purely on race boats, or you can go and work on sailing yachts. There's sailing yachts that don't ever really sail, you know, apart from, you know, one sail once a year. So I think knowing what you want early on will give you a leg up on everyone else. There are so many paths that you can do once you've been in it for a few years. So like, you might find that you working on board itself might not be best for you, but you might have done a yard period in an incredible shipyard where actually, you know, project management might be something you fall into, or owner's representative, you know, like all of these rich people have somebody that runs these programs for them. So that's another avenue. There, you know, people work on yachts and become pursers, which is basically an accountant. You know, that opens a huge field. Or, you know, some people join boats and realize that, you know, the deck department isn't the right thing for them, and they go into other departments. Like, I know friends of mine that started as deckhands and have ended up being like world-class chefs, because you see what that level is on board when you first join. Because really, when you join as a deckhand, you get involved with everything. You're the dishwasher, you're the floor cleaner, you're the table wiper, you're the, you know, help with the glasses. You're the person that wants to be learning from everybody, because you don't know anything yet. And that's a big tip I would give to young people coming into the industry. Try not to be super like, I know everything about sailing, because by God, you don't know anything yet.
Has your career taken you somewhere that you never expected?
I never expected that I would go sailing at 68 degrees north, just in the inside of the Arctic Circle. I never would have imagined that I would go that far north on a sailboat and, you know, absolutely send it with full main and full head sails and do 18 knots on a beautiful July day, still wearing a beanie and a fleece and sailing boots and all sorts. I never imagined I'd do that.
And finally, what does success look like for you in the next few years?
Um, what does success look for me? I think success would look like for me. Well, I've just passed my officer of the watch, which was a big goal for me. So that was my 5 year goal, and I've just hit that. So I did that in September. So my next big goal would be starting to tick off my master's modules and getting drive time. So working for a captain that's quite happy to let me take the boat on and off the dock to anchor to take on some of those captaining management roles.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for speaking with us
No
today.
problem.
Thank you.